Good morning, dear students. Today we are going to go ahead with the next part of financial management, that is working capital management. To understand this, first we need to know what is working capital. Working capital is the capital required to meet the day-to-day expenses of a particular business. In simple words, it is also called as short-term capital. Let's understand this concept of working capital in detail. So, working capital can be of two types. One is gross working capital, another is net working capital. Now, what is gross working capital? Gross working capital refers to the firm's total investment in current assets. So, in simple words, gross working capital is nothing but current assets. So, gross working capital is equal to current assets. Now, what are current assets? Current assets are the assets which can be converted into cash within an accounting year and include cash, short-term securities, debtors, bills receivable, inventory, etc. So, gross working capital is nothing but your current assets. Let's move on to the next part, that is net working capital. So, what is net working capital? Net working capital refers to the difference between current assets and current liabilities. So, mathematically, net working capital is equal to current assets minus current liabilities. So, what are current liabilities? These are the liabilities which have to be paid within an accounting year. Examples of current liabilities are creditors, bills payable, outstanding expenses, and so on. Now, net working capital can be positive or it can be negative. When will net working capital be positive? When current assets are greater than current liabilities, you get positive net working capital. If current assets are less than current liabilities, you get negative working capital. The next concept is about operating cycle. Now, what is operating cycle? It is the time duration Operating cycle is the time duration required to convert sales after the conversion of resources into inventories into cash. Let's make it simple for you. It is conversion of cash into cash. That's what operating cycle is. Let me explain this in the form of this process or this chart. First is cash. You have cash in your business. What do you do with this cash? You purchase raw materials. So cash gets converted into raw materials. Now, what do you do with the raw materials? You process them and you convert them into semi-finished goods, right? So, raw materials get converted into semi-finished goods. Finished goods further get converted into semi-finished goods further get converted into finished goods, and these finished goods can be sold for cash. So, it's get converted into cash. Sometimes these finished goods are sold for credit. So, when they are sold for credit, they get converted into debtors, and when you receive cash from the debtors, it get converted back into cash. So this is what an operating cycle talks about. That is, cash getting converted back into cash is called as a operating cycle. So there are problems related to operating cycle. To understand the problems, we need to know the elements of operating cycle. So let's understand the elements of operating cycle one by one. So again, operating cycle can be gross operating cycle or net operating cycle. As we have already dealt with working capital, the same thing concept applies over here. Now, what is gross operating cycle? The firm's gross operating cycle can be determined as inventory conversion period plus debtors conversion period. Okay, thus the gross operating cycle can be inventory conversion period plus debtors conversion period. So basically, current assets conversion period will give you gross operating cycle. Let's understand these elements individually. Inventory conversion period. Under inventory conversion period, we have three types of inventories which we have already studied in the past. The three types of inventories are raw material, semi-finished goods and finished goods. So how do you calculate inventory conversion period? We have to calculate raw material conversion period, semi-finished goods conversion period and finished goods conversion period, and the sum of all these three will give you inventory conversion period. Now conversion period can also be called as turnover period. Okay, so let's understand the formula of calculating these conversion periods. First one is raw material conversion period. Raw material conversion period is average stock of raw material into 360 divided by raw materials consumed. Okay, later you will find that these formulas are very much similar to each other. Okay, I'll give you that trick later. Semi-finished goods conversion period is equal to average stock of semi-finished goods into 360 divided by factory cost, or sometimes if factory cost is not given, you have to use cost of goods sold. COGS represents cost of goods sold. And the last one is finished goods conversion period. So finished goods conversion period is average stock of finished goods into 360 divided by cost of goods sold. Okay, pardon me, this is not SROCK, it is STOCK, stock. So just make those corrections. Okay, finished goods conversion period is equal to average stock of finished goods into 360 divided by cost of goods sold. Now if you observe these three formulas, the numerator is almost similar. Like if it is raw material, then it is average stock of raw material into 360. If it is semi-finished goods, then average stock of semi-finished goods into 360, and finished goods, it is average stock of finished goods into 360. So it is very easy to remember these formulas because the numerator is always similar, whereas the denominator represents how do we get the cost of these items. Like for raw material, it depends on raw material consumed. If it is semi-finished goods, it depends on how much is the factory cost or cost of goods sold, and for finished goods, it is the cost of goods sold. Okay. Now there might be a confusion as to what is this conversion period. Conversion period basically talks about how much time it takes for raw materials getting converted into cash. That is what raw material conversion period talks about. Or semi-finished goods conversion period is how much time it takes for semi-finished goods to get converted into cash and finished goods to get converted into cash. So that is what your raw material or semi-finished goods or finished goods conversion period talks about. Let's move on to the next element of the operating cycle, which is debtors conversion period, or also known as debtors turnover. Now conversion or turnover can be used interchangeably. Okay, so debtors conversion period is the average time taken to convert debtors into cash. So debtors conversion period represents the average collection period. It is calculated as follows. Okay, debtors conversion period can also be known as average collection period. So sometimes in the problem they may give average collection period. Don't get confused, average collection period is nothing but debtors conversion period. Now how do we calculate that? Debtors conversion period is equal to average debtors into 360 divided by credit sales. Now again, numerator, if you see, it is debtors conversion period, so it is average debtors into 360, because there are 360 is nothing but the total number of days in a year, divided by credit sales. Now why credit sales? Because debtors comes into existence only when there are credit sales. So debtors are always valued at credit sales. So very much similar to again the turnover periods of inventory. Let's move on to the next part, or the next element, which is creditors turnover period, or creditors deferral period, or creditors conversion period, you can say. Okay, so creditors or payables deferral period is the average time taken for firm in paying its suppliers. Creditors deferral period is as follows. Creditors conversion period is equal to average creditors into 360 divided by credit purchase. Now again, if you see the numerator, since it is creditors conversion period, you are talking about average creditors into 360 divided by credit purchase. Why credit purchase? Because it's creditors When do we have creditors? Only when we purchase goods on credit, we get creditors. So creditors are always valued on the basis of credit purchase. Okay. So this is how you find out the elements of the operating cycle. That is your raw materials turnover period, semi-finished goods turnover period, finished goods turnover period, debtors turnover period. And when you add all these four, that is raw materials, semi-finished goods, finished goods and debtors turnover periods, you get gross operating cycle. Next concept is the net operating cycle. Now how do we calculate net operating cycle, or it is also called as the cash cycle? It is gross operating cycle, which I have told you, that is raw material turnover period plus semi-finished goods turnover period plus finished goods turnover period plus debtors turnover period gives you gross operating cycle. From the gross operating cycle, if we deduct the creditors deferral period, that is creditors turnover period, we get something called as net operating cycle, or also called as cash cycle. So this is how we calculate gross operating cycle as well as net operating cycle. Moving ahead, net operating cycle is also called as cash conversion cycle. I have already told you that. So it is CCC, cash conversion cycle, or in simple words, cash cycle. Next is the type of, again there are two types of working capital. One is called as permanent working capital, another is variable working capital. So what is a permanent working capital? A minimum level of current assets which is continuously required by the firm to carry on its business operations is referred to as permanent working capital. So whether you are producing at a high rate or you are producing at a low rate, a minimum level of current assets will be required for the business, and that minimum level of current asset is called as permanent or fixed working capital. Next is fluctuating or variable working capital. Now what is this fluctuating or variable working capital? It is the extra working capital needed to support the changing production and sales activity of the firm. Okay, so when your production increases, you need more working capital. That is represented by fluctuating or variable working capital. So let's understand this in the form of a simple diagram. Okay, so if you see the straight line which is parallel to time, that portion represents your permanent working capital, that is fixed, it is required. Then whatever this curves that you see that is fluctuating, this is called as the temporary working capital. Sometimes it is very high, you require this much of working capital, whereas sometimes it is equal to your permanent working capital. Okay, so it goes on fluctuating depending on your business operations. This is called as permanent working capital and temporary working capital, or fluctuating working capital. Moving ahead to the next part and the last part of working capital, theoretical part of working capital, is the determinants of working capital. Now be rest assured that there is one question which is always there in the question paper related to the determinants of either it is working capital or dividend decision, or it is capital structure decision. So these determinants are very important. Let's try to understand what are the determinants of working capital right now. In the next module, I'll be covering the determinants of dividend decision as well as capital structure decision. So what are the determinants of working capital? First one is the nature of business. Before going ahead, determinants means what? It means that why every company has different levels of working capital. I hope you understand that every company will not have the same level of working capital. The level of working capital keeps on changing company to company. Now why does it change? What are the factors that makes the working capital to change, or what are the determinants that changes the working capital? Those are called as determinants. So let's understand these determinants one by one. First one is the nature of business. Now if you see nature of business, let's take two examples. One is a manufacturing firm, another is a software industry or a service based firm. Now if you think logically, a manufacturing company would require more working capital than a service based company, because a manufacturing company needs raw materials, needs to pay wages on a regular basis, etc., etc. So that is why a manufacturing firm would require more working capital as compared to a service based industry which requires more fixed capital. So nature of business also determines how much working capital is required. Second is the size of business. Greater the size, more is the working capital required. Less the size, less is the working capital required. Next is the market and demand. Now working capital also varies with the market and the demand. If the market situation is good and the demand for your product is very high, you need to produce more. And when you go on producing more and more, you require more working capital to support that production. So your working capital requirement will also be determined by the market and the demand. Next one is the technology and the manufacturing policy. It is always observed that latest technology uses less working capital, whereas older technologies use more working capital because there is more wastage, so you require more raw materials as compared to the new technology where the wastage is minimized and you require less amount of stock or raw materials. So if you are using a latest technology or upgraded technology, the working capital requirement for you would be less as compared to an old technology. So working capital also is determined by what type of technology are you utilizing. Next one is seasonal. Working capital is seasonal. Let's take a simple example. Okay, suppose you are into manufacturing of, let's say, mango pulp. Now when you talk about mango pulp, it is made out of mangoes and the production normally happens in the month of May, June, where the mangoes are available. April, May, June you can say. So the amount of working capital required during these 3 months, that is April, May and June, would be much higher than as compared to the other months of the year where raw material is not available and production is slow or there is no production at all. So that is why seasonal variations also determines the working capital required by a particular firm. Next is credit policy. Let's take an example. Suppose you are purchasing raw materials for cash. That means you have to pay cash immediately, but you're selling goods on credit. That means you're going to receive that cash after some months. The working capital required or the cash required would be very high. So your working capital requirement increases. Whereas in the other case, if you're buying raw materials on credit but you're selling goods on cash, you require less amount of working capital. So this is how your credit policy will determine how much working capital you will require. The next one is operating efficiency. Operating efficiency, we can relate it to the operating cycle. If you see, operating cycle talks about the duration of cash getting converted back into cash. So longer the duration, more working capital is required. Shorter the duration of the operating cycle, less working capital is required. So your operating efficiency, if you are efficient enough, your operating cycle is reduced and less amount of working capital would be required. Whereas if you are not efficient, your operations are not efficient, you may require more working capital because your operating cycle has increased. So operating efficiency also determines working capital requirement. Next one is the business cycle. Now when you talk about business cycle, it is recession, depression, recovery and so on. So in times of recession where the business is low, your production has gone down, you require less working capital because there is no demand for the product, your product is not getting sold, you produce less and working capital requirement is also minimum. Whereas when the business cycle reaches the recovery stage or the peak stage where there is a lot of demand for the products, there is a lot of money which is flowing in the market, you require more working capital because you need to produce more and more to satisfy the demands of your customer. So production goes up as well as your working capital goes up. So business cycle also determines how much amount of working capital would be required. So during the times of recession, less working capital. During the times of recovery or peak, more working capital would be required. So that is how business cycle determines the amount of working capital. Next one is taxation. Yes, if the tax rates are very high, you need to spend more money from your pocket. Your inventory cost goes up, your raw material cost goes up, your labor cost goes up, and you need to spend more money on working capital. Whereas your tax rates are low, the raw material cost automatically reduces, and you need to spend less amount on the same amount of stock. So working capital required in that case would be less. So taxation also will determine how much working capital is required. And lastly, it's inflation. Now what happens in inflation? When there is an inflation, naturally your prices go up. So your price of raw materials, semi-finished goods, everything increases. When these prices increases, you have to spend more cash on the same amount of raw materials which you had purchased earlier. So cash requirement increases. When your cash requirement increases, naturally your working capital requirement increases. So when there is an inflation, your cash requirement increases as well as working capital increases. Where in opposite situation, when there is a deflation, that means prices are very low. You need to spend less from your pocket to acquire same amount of raw materials. So when there is deflation, you need less working capital, less cash. So that is how inflation and deflation will lead or will determine how much working capital is required. Okay, so these are the 10 determinants. It's not a list which is complete. There might be many other determinants which can determine the working capital. But these are the 10 most important or most common determinants of working capital that you need to understand. So I hope you're clear with the theoretical concept of working capital. In the next videos, we'll be starting solving problems on estimation of working capital as well as determination of the operating cycle. I hope you're clear with this concept. Thank you. Happy learning.